I teach a class at School of Visual Arts here in New York City in the Products of Design graduate program. And one of the first projects we do is a tear down where these brand new design master students just take apart a commercial gadget and like discover what all the materials are, like what are all the industrial processes that happen to put all these pieces together. What do you think the team looks like that makes this product versus that product? And then the whole class compares and contrasts.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan, designer, maker, inventor, and Autodesker. Welcome to Shop Talk, the podcast series where we catch up with designers and makers live from the workshop. Today, we're talking to Becky Stern. Becky, would you tell us about your work, your channel, the stuff you're up to, a bit about your background for the audience?
Yeah, sure. I'm Becky Stern. I live in New York City and I'm a maker and a content creator and also an educator. I have a YouTube channel. I sell some products in my store and I'm sponsored by DigiKey. I have a show on their channel also about basic electronics. And I have been in the maker community for a long time. My first job out of college was blogging for Make Magazine. I ran their YouTube channel and the Adafruit YouTube channel. And like you said, I worked at Instructables for several years as the product manager, and we had a good time together. So I love making things from, like electronics and also crafts. And so there isn't a corner of the maker internet I haven't touched.
Yeah, I can confirm that that's true. We're going to hear a little bit more about that throughout the rest of the podcast. But you're one of the few people I know who has maker skills that range so widely. Like you've got, your electronic stuff that is a little bit more germane to what we do at Autodesk and so on. But you also you have tutorials on braiding hair and knitting, and you're good at cooking and like basically anything that has to do with making. You seem to be good at it. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation. Also, note to the audience, Becky is also really well connected in the maker community. So she's collaborated with Zyla Foxlin, who we had an episode with recently, with Ruth Amos from Kids Invent Stuff. Becky's always been participating in the Maker Secret Santa. Actually made maybe my favorite Maker Secret Santa project, which is a hot dog machine. One of the things I love about that hot dog machine is not just that it's a machine that makes hot dogs, which is amazing on its own, but that you actually sewed the soubrette hot dog umbrella and like made the real umbrella just like the iconic New York hot dog cart. So
Yes,
kudos
I
to you.
used all of my craft skills on that project. There's mechanical engineering, there's electronics, so there's the crafts, so there's a iron on, there's an American Girl doll umbrella in there.
It's great. So would you tell us a little bit about your learning journey? Like how did you get there? So you end up at Instructables in 2016. What led to that? And then you could kind of segue from that into what you're doing now.
Well, our mutual friend Randy, who's a community manager at Instructables, is my college friend. So that's how I got an in at Instructables, but my reputation took me the rest of the way. um, I've always been a multi-hyphenate when it comes to creative media, and I went to undergraduate school for art, media, and design, and was just always interested in trying new things and started doing some electronics during college and was also taking like a silkscreen class at the time. So of course, like I'm gonna make a steak that glows, plush steak. I don't, sure, because I I have to make something and I should want to be able to work on it in more than one class. So like it was in like my junior senior year of college at Parsons here in New York City that I got like on boing boing every single day with a project. I had like final projects due, right? So 4 or 5 projects, and I managed to get like boing boing and make magazine blogs were really big then, and it was a really big deal for me to get multiple like Cory Doctorow posts in one week during like finals in college. And I guess I caught somebody's eye because they offered me a job at Make Magazine blogging for them. So right after I did finish college, I started blogging for Make and Craft, and just was like saturating myself in the internet community of makers back in the 2010 area, and had a live show at Make with Matt Richardson, who's now at Raspberry Pi, and was getting into making tutorial videos at my desk. So I love videography and photography, and I love teaching. And so being able to put those things together in like the reinforcement of publishing things constantly, people let me know that I was good at teaching people how to do things in video. So um, I leaned into that, and I took a job at Adafruit where I was doing all of their wearables content and managing their YouTube channel. I had also managed the Make Magazine YouTube channel. Um, so I had a lot of it. I like to say that I like got paid by other people to learn all this stuff, because then once I knew how to run a YouTube channel and create content on a schedule, then and had enough money saved up, then I could go off on my own and be self-employed. Well, and the influencer marketing like economy has to get big enough to support someone who makes I would say most of my content's pretty niche, even though it's broad. It's like I teach you how to braid your hair, I can teach you how to make a friendship bracelet, but I can also teach you how to make a Raspberry Pi television for your cats. That's what I'm working on
Yeah,
right now.
it's one of the things I love about your work, and something I noticed obviously early on when you came to Instructables is that there's obviously the electronics, the technical side of things. There's some pretty sophisticated stuff happening there. But there's also some really interesting stuff you do that's like you said, just hair braiding, knitting, that kind of thing, where we don't really think of that. We tend to think of it as something that isn't studied, maybe, right? It's not something there's like maybe not classes in that if you go to a, university or something, but it is something you have to learn how to do, and there's a right way to do it. And there's all kinds of details around all those things that need to be paid attention to. And, you're really, I think it's a really cool thing in that it also brings people in that might not be interested otherwise, or maybe things that are more technical or intimidating, but you look and see like, oh, knitting, like I get that. I kind of know what that's about. Or braiding hair. Like I want to know how to braid my hair. And then you're sort of like sneakily bringing them into this
Yeah.
kind of technical world, which I think is super cool.
Me and Emily Grassley, if you know her, we're friends from the Brain Scoop channel. It's a natural history channel. We both have a popular hair braiding video on our channels, and we like to talk about our like conversion rate from like that one video to like some of the more technical content. So like it's true that if you have long hair, I've had people say I've never had long hair, or I'm trans and I never know how to do my hair, and now I'm learning it for the first time. Stuff that like my parents taught me, right? I grew up in a really crafty household. My mom is a quilter and a sewist and a knitter, and my dad's a cook, and they both do home renovation. They have a bed and breakfast that they renovated from a 1600s farmhouse, and they did like all the work that they could do themselves, the plumbing, the uh I guess you don't do your own electrical, or you at least get it inspected. But so
Hopefully.
I picked up a lot of crafts really young. I really liked baking, really liked crochet, and I picked up sewing really early. I think I made a clone of my Beanie Baby when I was 8, just using hand sewing and like the beans from the cabinet. So a sewing machine for my 13th birthday. And I didn't really start doing much technical stuff until high school and college. I got into some computer programming and realized, hey, I already know how to knit. This computer programming thing is like has a lot in common with knitting patterns. And so I guess because I delved so much into technology in high school, college, and beyond, I kind of take the classic craft stuff that I know, and I'm always drawing like the connections between them, and using one as a gateway drug for the other. So like, oh, if you like to knit, like computer programming, actually, some types of it are really similar to knitting patterns. So you might like this, and just sort of inspire. I try to inspire people to learn different things because I'm a hobby collector. Like I can't get enough. I thought I would like every craft except scrapbooking, and then I tried scrapbooking, and it turns out it's also fun.
You're insatiable. I mean, knitting is something that's always kind of, I think of it as something like black magic. I'll watch somebody knit from some yarn, and all of a sudden there's a sweater or a hat or something. One of my sisters will be doing this around
You can
Christmas
tell
or whatever.
Jonathan's not the one who tech edited my knitting class on the Instructable site. We tech edited
No.
each other's content. I tech edited my Quarren's meat class. That
Uh-huh.
was fun because I got to cook steak.
Yeah.
But you need to take my knitting class and it won't be black magic anymore. But I do like to say that when the weather gets cold, my hands start doing this, and I might as
Uh-huh.
well put some yarn and needles in there because otherwise it's for nothing.
Maybe that's where it came from. That's like the origins of knitting. Yeah, it's
How
interesting too,
funny.
because like I never really thought of the connections between that and say a computer program, but it totally makes sense. There's a series of steps, and then
There's
there's an
repeating
algorithm
steps.
built in. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like when you're like making a hat, it goes from being a cylinder where it's just like going all the way around and you have to start decreasing stitches and then and you have to count each row and the count in between each row is going to be like -1 every time. So the
yeah.
the basic algebra is what you use to learn Arduino also. So it's
Wow.
yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah, I mean it's also, you know this, but the first the first computers were weaving machines
Yeah,
basically.
jacquard loom. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a desire to print images in fabric and we
Yeah.
decided to do it with punch cards.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I remember thinking I always thought it was like, I don't know, spaceships or the like submarines or something like that. It's like no, pretty pictures
Well,
in fabric.
like technology comes from different places, right? And like a
Yeah.
lot of technology comes from the military. Like our cell phones have accelerometers because of missiles,
Right.
right? Uh, it's nice when it comes from somewhere else, like
Yeah.
scraps.
Totally. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. What inspires you to do the projects you do? Where do you get inspiration from?
That's an easy one, right? Like I'm a designer, so I find problems in my everyday life and I solve them. But also just sometimes I'm also an artist, so I think what's going to be like creatively fulfilling to make, what materials do I want to get my hands on? Like what processes do I actually enjoy doing, or what haven't I tried before? Because I'll probably like it. And what project can I use to wrap my head around that? So like, PCB design, I had a fun project idea to replace the PCB inside of a PlayStation controller. I had a bunch of broken PS4 controllers, and where the buttons and the joysticks work just fine, but the battery management or whatever the controller part was not working. And also now we have a PS5. So what are you going to do with all your old PS4 controllers? I created a drop-in replacement circuit board that just broke out all of the buttons and joysticks, not the touchpad, but like there's several buttons so that you could use the controller for something else, an Arduino project, a robot. And that was a really good project for me to stretch my PCB design skills because the controller itself, the board that I was replacing had like a membrane keypad it needed to connect to. So that was a kind of a strange little pads I had to make, which is learned a new technique in Fusion electronics to make everything in the right spot, and then also used the Fusion 3D to PCB board shape tool to like I made a 3D printed like little template because it's a funny shaped board. It has like little curves and notches. And I made a 3D printed template to see that it would fit inside the enclosure. And then I used that same 3D file to import as a uh board shape. And so it kind of scratched a bunch of itches for me in that like I learned a bunch of techniques and got to work on a cool project at the end of the day that became like a music controller. So um yeah, I
Yeah.
like to engineer fun experiments to do, and I'm lucky that people are entertained by them because then I get to do them professionally.
Yeah. I really liked that project. I mean, full disclosure, we sponsored that one. But it was really cool to see you kind of dive into PCB design. I didn't realize going into it that that wasn't something you'd really done before, but could have fooled me when I saw the video. I mean, I was really impressed. It was just kind of, I don't know.
I've been
You seemed like you've
around a
been doing it
lot
for a
of
long
PCB
time.
design.
Sure.
PCB design has been in my life for a long time. Just because I wasn't the one clicking all the buttons doesn't mean I haven't learned a
Yeah.
lot by osmosis and being around
Yeah.
it.
So that process when you were working in Fusion, were you doing did you 3D print just walk me a little bit through the prototyping process, right? So you've got your PCB design, and that's something you can test virtually. You can see where the circuits go and all that stuff. You're working with a schematic and a board design, which is typical for any like electronic software. Um, you have the physical representation of it, right? So I know that when I work with when I'm like consumer product design, when the board is in a place where the substantial physical things are there, so like this connector here or this little speaker, whatever the things that like will impact the enclosure, I always 3D print that part immediately and just try it out to make sure it's working with my other parts. Did you have a similar process?
Yeah, I traced the original PCB by scanning it on my flatbed scanner and
Mhm.
preserving the units.
Yeah.
So that's how I made a very accurate SVG of the board outline. And 'cause it has all these notches and it has some like non-round holes. And I imported into Fusion, extruded it a little bit, and just printed that right away. Of course,
Yeah.
before I ever got any PCBs made, I wanted to make sure that the board was going to fit into the particular enclosure that, was already designed for me, and I didn't want to have to modify it. And then, so then once I was convinced that it would fit, and I mean, I know the 3D printer has a little bit different tolerances than you can't guarantee a perfect
Yeah.
fit, but
Much different tolerances.
I did get lucky. I mean, I wanted to make sure, the hole's in the right place.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to if I needed to make a second revision to make the holes the right size, or I was willing to do that. But I did get lucky that my boards came in and they just fit
Mhm.
perfectly. So I know that that's not necessarily advice. That's not, get it right on the first time. That's not advice. I did get lucky, but I'm also like, I don't know, really good at Illustrator and really good at
Sure.
scanning things to make sure that I did a really good job on the reverse engineering of the shape. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
so
you practice enough, and you know what to look for, right? It's like, okay, I understand the location of this hole is really important. This part over here maybe a little less so,
not
but I
less,
know the
right? Like, oh,
features
if
that are
it
gonna,
exactly, like, oh,
yeah,
I need to nail this hole and
yeah,
everything related to this hole, because if the hole's in the wrong place, it's going to shift the whole board. But you're right, on the edge over here, if that sticks out a little too much or is a little bit too small, it's not going to make a difference. Especially because I was routing my own my own traces inside the board, so I could keep them away from any areas that I thought might needed to change size later. So then I did all my layout, and it was really important to get the joysticks in the right place because those protrude from the enclosure, and it's really important to get the membrane keypad um, interface in the right spot. I wasn't sure if there was going to be enough. I wasn't sure what was like pressing those things together, and so I tried to make sure that when I ordered the PCBs that they were the same thickness as the original PCB. I was worried there was going to be some, like, I don't know, I was ready to use some Z tape if I needed to, which is that tape that's conductive only in the Z direction, so it would like
mm,
fill up the space if needed. But it actually just works. So once that's in the right place, I ordered my test boards. I couldn't test the placement of that and whether it would work virtually, because yes, I know that this pad is routed to this um, pin, but I don't know if pressing the button is actually going to make the electrical connection that I need. So I made a first version that just had header pins that stick out the back, and I had to carve a big hole in my PlayStation controller and solder wires to every single thing. And then I had to figure out I used that board to figure out which button was which, because
uh,
the PCB is not labeled, and there's like however many, less than 20, but more than 10 pads that need to be connected. And like, which one's ground? Which one is the right joystick button? Which one is the
yeah.
left
And
trigger
Sony's
button?
not giving you that schematic.
No, and it was easy enough to try it out anyway. I wired all the pins to a breadboard and used an LED like to try to
Yeah,
figure out. And I also, because you can't stick a multimeter in the membrane keypad while you're trying to hold the
yeah,
controller.
yeah.
So I needed to make this interim version to be able to map out which pin was connected to which pad, so that I could make better documentation for the final version, which had the header moved over, and I found some right angle headers to use so that you actually don't have to modify the controller at all. The wires come out where the front light used to be. There was like a little clear panel that, like, I just didn't put it back in, and then the wires could come straight out, so no cutting was
Hmm.
required. Yeah, it went like surprisingly smoothly. But I had some help from an electrical engineer friend who was guiding me and answering my questions along the way. David Craner, you see him on my channel a lot when we do teardown. So I
Yeah,
know a lot of electrical engineers that can help me. And the board doesn't have a lot of components. I'm working on a second version now. I have been for a while. The project's been in a box, but you can always just take it out, start working on it again. That is populated with the parts I'm using to make the music controller. So I do have a PCB available for sale that just turns your PS4 controller into a set of buttons and joysticks, if you want to use it for something like that. But I originally, for anything really, but I originally wanted to put like more components inside the board. So there's like an RP2040 board doing like a synthesizer, and then there's some sound samples on that board that are activated by the buttons, and there's an audio out, and there's a switch to toggle between there's a speaker, so the switch toggles between the speaker or the audio output to like a headphone jack. So there's a couple of components there, and I'm just taking my time
yeah.
to get. I have a first version, and I want to make sure that that when I release that project that it's actually something useful people can use.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder whether, I mean, obviously, putting a project out like that and putting out all the data sets and everything, that's going to be useful to a lot of people that are interested in like kind of prototyping and doing it on their own. But I'd imagine there might be an opportunity there to mass produce that board and then let people put it in their dead PS4 controllers all over the world. I know you've got another kind of kit consumer product that you already have out on the market, but maybe you considered this being a consumer product too.
Yeah, it is. I sell, well, I mean, it's on Tindy. Like I sell the PS4 breakout board.
Oh, okay.
And it comes with the tiniest switches that you need that sit underneath like the PlayStation button has like a little tactile dome switch
Hmm.
and there's a couple other tactile switches that so it comes and it comes optionally with joysticks so that you can mod your broken you can turn your broken PS4 controller into something else. A lot of people have the misconception that it's like somehow I get a lot of questions from like teenage video game fans who are like, is this how I overclock my controller? It's like, no, this is how you recycle. This is how you recycle your enclosure, the
Yeah.
enclosure of your controller,
Yeah.
for something completely different. So yeah, that circuit board, the basic breakout circuit board is available in my store. And then I am working on the music controller circuit
Uh-huh.
as like a more as a fork of that project.
There's so much waste, right? And there's all this stuff out there that's really well made. A PS4 controller is a great example. Like that is a beautiful piece of design. It's ergonomic, it's durable. You know, there's some really sophisticated injection molding and design went into that. And then it's just a brick when the next one comes out, right? So I love that idea of finding things that are ubiquitous and being able to repurpose them. You've done quite a few projects like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I've recycled like vintage cameras into, Raspberry Pi gift camera, stuff like that. I hate wasting stuff and I don't like making PCBs that are going to sit around forever, right? Like PCBs are e-waste and I don't know, I have a strong environmental bent to my moral compass and can't bring myself to make e-waste when I could do something else with it, right? And I teach a class at School of Visual Arts here in New York City in the Products of Design graduate program. And one of the first projects we do is a tear down where these brand new design master students just take apart a commercial gadget and like discover what all the materials are, like what are all the industrial processes that happen to put all these pieces together. What do you think the team looks like that makes this product versus that product? And then the whole class compares and contrasts. And yeah, like they all ask me, they're like, hey, could I reuse this part in my future project? I'm like, yeah, you should totally harvest that motor, save it for later. We'll learn how to use it. And so some projects are inspired just by that, right? Like by this is a piece of garbage. I have a big box of broken PS4 controllers and now I don't even use my PS4 anymore at all. What could I possibly do with these? Like that takes advantage of the things they have going for them, like you said, the very ergonomic design and like tons of buttons.
I love the idea that you're making it like fun and interesting to be responsible with the stuff you have.
Yeah, I did a video last year about one of my most popular videos is about recycling disposable vape batteries.
yeah.
So you know how like
Uh-huh.
they banned the government did a study on this one where they like made a law banning like the Juul products, but the law had all these holes in it that said, oh, well, if it's a single-use device,
Yeah.
go for it. So
So
China
now you're
is
just
like, I will see your mistake and raise you 11 D million lithium batteries in your single-use vapes. So I made a video last year about that, about just like taking them apart and safely storing them and stuff. And lots of people are interested in making power banks out of those. So I think I want to
Mm,
work on that next. I mean, you're playing with fire a little bit, quite
yeah.
literally sometimes with lithium batteries, but uh, there's the waste is so infuriating. So I get project inspiration from little problems I have around or big problems I see happening, or I feel like people need to know that these single-use vapes have lithium batteries in them that are totally perfectly good for your small Arduino projects.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because you don't if you don't know about this stuff, you don't realize that when you open a AA battery, for example, it's just a stack of battery cells. It's like all of this stuff is basically the same thing. It's just packaged in a different way. Right. And then when you start to play with a little bit, it's the whole world opens up when you realize that like that's just a 3-volt battery. I can just take that 3-volt battery and put it on this thing and it works just fine. And now I don't have to buy a new thing. And this doesn't have to, ruin a water table somewhere. It's interesting that you're teaching that stuff at a university level. I mean, normally when you have this conversation, it's about, like middle school, high school, kids, primary, secondary education, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really interesting I mean, I've seen this when I taught in the past as well, but like when you have adults who already have an education, maybe they already have a career, and then they start bringing in new fields of like new spheres of knowledge, you start to see these like the synthesis happen, which is super interesting. It's why you get things like e-textiles, I think, right? I'm sure that was just somebody that was maybe a fashion designer at some point, and then there was some at MIT, there was some, like flexible circuit thing happening, and she thought, oh, like, well, why don't we? What happens if we put those two things together?
Yeah, like material curiosity is it can be hugely motivating if you have enough interest in the field and knowledge in the field already, It's like, why did I have to wait until my advanced physics class to learn about the ball launcher? Why couldn't
Yeah,
that have happened like way sooner? And like, yeah, my students are grad students in a design program, and a lot of them are fresh out of undergrad, and some occasionally I'll get somebody returning to school from the workforce after having some meat grinder advertising job
yeah,
or something they realize that they want a more sophisticated skill level for, but they're in a design program, but I'm teaching them like basic electronics, and it is the same material you would use to teach middle schoolers the same content, like basic Arduino, because they're beginners at electronics. They might
yeah,
have a very sophisticated, that just means that their prototypes look a lot better than the middle schoolers' prototypes, but the code isn't any better,
yeah,
like
yeah.
when you're a beginner, you're at some kind of advanced level thing like computer programming or prototyping with electronics. Like all beginners are made equal. In fact, the older students have a disadvantage because their minds aren't as plastic, and they're
Yeah.
always like second guessing themselves.
Would you say that the repurposing projects, do you think those are the most maybe important ones you've done, most impactful? If not, are there any other projects that come to mind where you think like this is something that I think is really important that I'm proud of?
Yeah, I am proud of teaching people how to reuse the things around them. I can't think of anything that beats the vape battery video at this point in terms of that satisfaction of like I was pissed about something, so I made content about it and it's actually helping.
Yeah, yeah. That's really
A lot of my projects are personal satisfaction things, and I'm like, I don't care if you don't like this. I wanted to make it anyway.
has that
Like I
one
made an
performed well?
LED. Sometimes I can make an
Yeah.
LED curtain. It's just like a beaded curtain with LEDs all over it, and it acts like a giant screen. Performs fine because it's like got a lot of LEDs in it. People like things with a lot of LEDs in them. I wanted a Raspberry Pi smart mirror. There's already really popular software package called Magic Mirror for making a Raspberry Pi smart mirror. And I just made a video that detailed my construction process a little bit more than I thought other people had on their video, and that one performed really well too. So
I like that one. It's pretty. It's pretty to watch too. It's like
yeah, right.
there's a really cool quality with that mirror, particularly the way you designed it. It's like this kind of, I don't know. It reminds me of a like a sci-fi movie from the 2000s. It's really
That's what my
um,
bathroom's like. What's really dystopian about the magic mirror is that at the bottom of the screen it shows you like how out of date you are to the main branch. And so like if I don't keep it updated, my like mirror that I'm brushing my teeth in will say like you are 1,500 commits behind behind master branch. And I'm like, don't GitHub shame me, mirror.
I'm just trying to brush my teeth here.
I don't want to plug a keyboard into you right now.
So you have a degree in art and you got interested in electronics and applying that when you were in school. And that's kind of segued into what you have now, which is sort of this creative octopus business where you're doing all these different things and kind of putting them together and putting content out. And you've got this great network, and there's all these people with different, specialties that can kind of fill in the gaps with your knowledge base. But how do you decide how, like, when to outsource something and when to bring in a person as like a tutor so that you can do it yourself next time?
It's usually when there's a deadline,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, okay, I got the Autodesk sponsorship, gonna have to make this PCB by the date I promised. Or like 2 years ago when I made a Secret Santa project for Colin Furs,
Yeah.
and I wanted it to have some mechanical engineering, and I'm not a mechanical engineer. And that project also has a deadline because it has to be shipped and received by a certain time to make the whole Secret Santa thing work. I outsourced some of the mechanical engineering to a former engineering student, Ruby Zoom, who like was like, this is my bread and butter. Like, of course, why do you need three motors when one of the motors can be gravity?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a conveyor belt for a hot dog that dumps mustard and onion sauce on it. And she designed the like mechanism that both wiggles and squeezes the mustard tube and dumps the onion sauce. And then and then like the basic, and then the conveyor belt, and then it worked from there. So it's when I have a deadline and I need an upskill that naturally would take me longer than that deadline
Yeah.
is usually when I call in reinforcements. But um, of course, I love to collab with my friends. So if ever we have overlapping interests, then that's always a fun thing too. Like Zyla Foxland and I did a project together recently. She is quite a bit younger than you and I, and like used all of my Adafruit tutorial videos to learn about embedding electronics in soft things, and had like a telepresence hug toy startup,
Yeah.
like right when she was in college. And so we did a collab where we recreated that project with some of her leftover bears, and like
Uh-huh.
remade the circuit to use, like nowadays Wi-Fi circuits are $5. So
Right.
so we like made a DIY open source version of her old startup product together as a collab, just because she was in town and we wanted to do something together.
It's something I think a lot of people that are interested in getting into this stuff, whether it's, say maybe you want to be a content creator and, have a YouTube channel or whatever it is, or if you're just interested in, you have an idea and you want to make this thing happen or whatever it is. One of the common misconceptions I find a lot is the idea that you kind of have to be able to do everything yourself. And it's when I talk to
Before you
people,
can outsource it,
right,
sometimes you need to be able to at least know enough about it to manage it.
right. Yeah, that for sure. But I think one of the barriers to it a lot of times is, well, I'm going to have to always do this, so there's just no way this is going to happen. And what I tell people a lot of times is you really just need to find the right network of people. You need to like kind of plug yourself into a community and find the people that are doing the same kinds of things you are, and those the connections are going to start to open up there that are going to like enable your journey into whatever this thing is you want to do.
You're right. You don't have to do it all yourself. And I like to outsource the parts that bog me down the most. And video editing was one of those things. I love video editing and I still do a fair amount of it. Like Tyler will turn in a draft to me and then I'll have my way with it. And but it doesn't take me like he can do it way faster. He can put together a working draft way faster than I can. So it makes more economic sense to do it that way, because then I can free up my time for stuff that I'm more efficient at.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, speaking of efficiency and your process, I'd like to know a little bit more about that. So, obviously you have an idea. I assume you start sketching or writing. You maybe move on to Tinkercad to sketch out something that's more physical, and then maybe you go to Fusion to do circuits. Or can you tell us about your process, like what's your prototyping process is for a project?
I usually like to build something with my hands first. Hate to
Hmm.
disappoint you.
Wow.
So I like to I also just like making things with my hands. So like this project right now, I'm working on this cat TV. It's from this idea where my cat, let's see, is the cat here? Yes, this cat
Oh.
eventually really likes to watch television. We notice while we're watching television that he is also watching the
Uh-huh.
television, and we'll get scared from a loud scene or something. But like, so we're like, okay, well, let's see what we can put on that you might particularly like. So we could look like TV for cats on YouTube, and sure enough, there's a bunch of YouTube channels that are
Oh
just
yeah.
like a log with a bunch of bird seed on it, and then like a bunch of squirrels and birds come, and the audio is so charming that the
I
cat is
love
like
it.
looking behind the speaker to like find where the birds are. So we know that he loves watching TV, and so I'm making him a miniature TV, and it's a Raspberry Pi and a little display, and I'm 3D printing an enclosure for it. I thought I wanted to sew it, like make a like a bean bag, but
Uh-huh.
I think the heat is going to be a problem. So I think I'm just going to make it a 3D printed thing. But my process was to plug the components in first and like play around on the Raspberry Pi. Then once my screen's on and it won't, and I'm holding it on the desk and I can't actually look at it at a good angle, I'm like, oh, gee, it'd be really nice if I had something that would hold the screen up while I'm working on this project. That's when I go to Tinkercad in this case
Got it.
and whip up a little enclosure.
You're in New York. Space is very expensive there. Can you tell us about that? What's it like working in a small space, and how do you manage it?
The small space feels comforting to me because it's like my little computer nook. And I've always had a little computer nook ever since we got our first computer when I was little. And I'm the third kid. So I think I had a little bit too much unsupervised time
Me too.
on that like IBM PS2,
Yeah.
doing whatever I wanted on the text-based internet that you can't read from across the room. And so and then going to art school, you're given like an artist studio space that's usually pretty small, sometimes attached to a larger workshop, where you're supposed to like, live in it and have your whole process happening in this one room. And I don't know, I like that. I'm also kind of a loner. I get distracted pretty easily. So like the open floor plan, I never worked in the office with you at Autodesk. I was always just visiting, and I wouldn't get any work done when I'm sitting in that
Mhm.
open plan work space because everything's happening over my shoulder and I'm too easily distracted. So I also work better by myself in a zone where I can control the audio. So I've made it work. And also I have a very gracious partner. I work from home, so I'm saving money on the whole. This is home and work. It's not two separate leases. And I have a very tolerant partner who has given me the largest bedroom in our 3-bedroom apartment. The smallest bedroom is his office, and then the medium-sized Mama Bear bedroom is our actual bedroom. So it also helps. It helps to have people in your life who support your creative endeavors as well. And I like, it has a door, so I can shut off work at the end of the night. I have like my work phone that I leave, has all the notifications on and stuff, like stays in this room. So I do have a good separation, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it for me, it's important to understand what to be grateful for when you're talking about constraints in the work you do, right? A lot of times constraints can look annoying, like if I just had a 2-car garage size space, I could make this thing. But you don't realize that those constraints are actually fueling your creativity. They're making you solve a problem in a way that you wouldn't have to otherwise. Um,
Yeah, and I can cut
something.
a 4x8 sheet of plywood in here.
Hmm.
Um, that's it. That's like a lot. The fact
Yeah,
that I can do that, it's binary, right? You either can or you can't. And once you can, then you can, and it's big enough to do it.
yeah,
So there. Like, yes, I have to like cover everything else with sheets,
yeah,
my camera equipment and my computer and stuff, but like it's big enough to do the thing that needs the doing. Or like if I need to spray paint, I can go out there, even though it's not a luxurious large space. It's better than doing it on the sidewalk,
yeah,
which art
yeah. I
students
mean,
also do, by the way. When the spray booth is full, they just go out to the sidewalk.
of course, the sidewalk is covered in little edges with different colors, and yeah, I can picture it now. I know exactly what you're talking about.
They just repaved the sidewalk in front of where I teach, and I'm like, oh no, all of the spray paint corners.
It's kind of fun too because you can walk by sometimes. You're like, I know what project that was from. That weird
Yeah.
shape right there. That was Susan's thing she was doing. That was like
It's a nice part of art school for sure, is
yeah,
recognizing people's spills.
yeah. Recognizing people's spills. I like it. So the way we've been asking this question is it's a zombie apocalypse and you have to start from scratch. What tool do you have first? That's one question. But then I think the other question is this is probably going to be a different thing. But what's your favorite tool? What's your favorite thing that you like to just kind of get into the flow and use this tool and make things come to life?
Yeah, the answers are different, definitely, because
Yeah.
like you think zombie apocalypse is different than desert island.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we're just gonna go with like favorite tool I love to work with, it would probably be my Olfa utility knife with the snap off blades. I got
Nice.
that thing in college as part of my freshman year art school tool kit,
Yep.
and I have been using it since. But in a zombie apocalypse situation, you need a 2006 Ford Econoline cargo van.
So you're good. You're good
With
to go.
and you need to like put like a cattle catcher on the front and
Oh, so you're
armor
going. Okay, I got it. Got it. Yeah.
to get out, just to plow other vehicles out of the way so that you can
Sure.
drive. I don't know, Long Island. I don't really have a plan for getting out of the city, but I used to have a plan. I definitely have a plan for staying home. I'm gonna stay home with my pets if there's a natural disaster.
Yeah, me too.
I
Yeah.
used to have a bag that would help me get home from work, though. Called it my get home bag. It's not like a bug out bag.
Uh-huh.
It's a bag that had everything I would need to do to like swim across the East River from like Lower Manhattan to Brooklyn to then get back to my house where
Oh,
I
I
have
love
like
it.
water and food and all of that stuff. So it was just, like a waterproof bag to put my clothes in so that I can swim.
That is so cool. I've never
And
heard
like
of
a pair
that.
of shoes, a pair of old
Yeah, yeah,
running shoes, because like women don't wear very practical shoes, and like uh, realistically, what if there's another 9/11 scenario in Lower Manhattan? You be hoofing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. So imagine a teenager who is a big fan of you and wants to be like you. What advice do you have to offer?
I would say that like there's only so much grinding you can do before you like burn out. So you should find an environment to grind in a like way that doesn't burn you out or nurtures you, right?
Mm.
Like I would say like if you're young, try to reduce the workplace trauma that you're going to be exposed to. If you want to grow and learn, great. Like take opportunities that are going to help you learn and grow, but also like don't stay in a situation that is causing you more pain than growth for very long. And learning how to recognize that while you're in it, I don't think is super easy. But just like if you can reflect on the nurturingness of your environment, I think it's important to find a nurturing environment for yourself to grow at your maximum like speed, but like fullness.
Yeah.
I've found that after having the contrast of working in some more dysfunctional working environments that um, you just don't have to. You just don't
Yeah.
have to work for jerks. Um, you can find nice people to work with no matter what you're interested in. And when you're in a really small field, that can be tough because you're like, oh, I'm never gonna get away from this like jerk who's in my field.
Yeah.
Uh you can. You can
Yeah.
make the field bigger and then there'll be more people in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my advice is to find a nurturing place and then like learn as much as you can from those nurturing places and get paid to learn. Get somebody else
Great
to pay you to
advice.
learn before you go off on your own. So that like the mistakes you make, you get to learn from them, but you don't have to pay for them financially.
Yeah. Great advice. I love it. Well, thanks, Becky. I think we probably got enough to make a podcast out of there. I wish we could talk for another hour and a half.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all things Shop Talk. If you're ready to try Fusion for yourself, find the link in our description.